Georgia prosecutor has dropped the entire election interference case against President Trump and his allies relating to alleged actions taken after the 2020 election. Let's bring in CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, thank you for your time today. What can you tell us about this?
Well, Mugo, we know that this case was handed off from Fani Willis, who brought this case initially, because she was removed from the case because of a romantic relationship she had with the lead prosecutor on it. This resulted in not just President Trump getting elected and him being immune to some parts of prosecution, really going on trial physically during his administration for the next 4 years, but at the same time, Mugo, what it did was allow the government to open up whether or not there would be another prosecutor to take this case. It was ordered by a judge a couple months ago. We covered it then, and a man named Peter Skandalakis took over. He was the head of the Georgia Prosecutors Association. He said he was willing to do it after he couldn't find anybody else to take on this case.
So you guys, I wanted to report on this. This is the most recent, the latest update with the Trump election interference case. And I'm sitting here in real time. I'm actually reacting to this because I have not covered any updates with this case in a very long time. As you guys know, I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I actually personally know some of the co-defendants who were involved in this case, and I have been sorely concerned about the status of this case because Fonnie Willis has effectively ruined so many people's lives. And it's not just the co-defendants on top of she tried to destroy Donald Trump's life. It's not just that, but you have the residents of Fulton County. We're actually going to talk a little bit about how this doesn't just impact those who were involved in his campaign, the electors. This actually is going to impact Fulton County residents. So here we have found that Fani Willis, she's been kicked off the case. She got kicked off the case a while back. But the remaining outstanding issue as it relates to this case was, well, what happens now? And that's where this other prosecutor comes in. Now, no prosecutor worth their salt would touch this case with a 10-foot pole because they already knew that it was dead out of the water to begin with. I honestly, personally believe that Fani Willis attempted to prosecute this case because she thought this was going to be the career move of the century for her. This case was more about her than it was about, did Trump do something criminally wrong? And was he involved in a whole racketeering scheme in order to steal the 2020 election or change the 2020 election results here in the state of Georgia? Fani Willis, like most liberal Black women who lack self-awareness and who are not interested in really serving and giving back to the constituents who elected them, but they are strategic in how they do things. They are self-serving. If you guys remember, Fani Willis was the individual who said that Fulton County residents were not going to have to worry about their Fulton County district attorney sleeping with subordinates. And then here enters Nathan Wade, the very individual that she recruited to serve as the special prosecutor on this case when she was knowingly engaged in an affair, an off relationship that was more than business professional. That's essentially what happened in this case. And so now the Georgia prosecutor who decided, listen, no one else is going to touch this. So let me look at the over 1 terabyte of files and information and evidence that have been secured thus far, and then make a determination as to what are we going to do with this case. Well, they determined that the case they're not going to pursue it because it just doesn't make any sense. And I have reason to believe that they looked at the evidence and it was like, did this chick really believe that this what she gathered is RICO? We know that Fani has an affection and an affinity for RICO cases because what you're able to do in a RICO case is you get to prosecute multiple defendants all at one time, and it really just makes you look like this superstar of a prosecutor. But in reality, this case just doesn't really satisfy the necessary requirements for it to have considered been a RICO case. So I'm going to let this person finish, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how does this impact the residents of Fulton County.
And in a memo today that was reported on by our associates here at CBS News in Atlanta, they're saying, and according to this statement, Scandalakis, this new prosecutor, cites a lack of time and resources to take on this case, and also cites that President Trump, because he's currently sitting in the White House, could not actually be put on trial until at least 2029. He said, quote, "To serve the interests of justice and promote judicial finality, this case needed to be dropped." And we just got a statement from President Trump's legal team, and including the lead defense attorney in this case, I should say, Stephen Sadow, who said a fair and impartial prosecutor has put an end to this lawfare. We are also out waiting to hear a reaction from potentially Fani Willis, and we'll see what President Trump has to say himself over this holiday weekend as it approaches. But certainly quite a monumental time. This was the one active legal case against President Trump. His allies are still on trial in some other jurisdictions around the country. Specifically, Mugo, President Trump couldn't pardon himself if this had actually gone to trial because it's a state case. He couldn't pardon his allies. It's something that kind of was a live ball again for a couple of weeks and now has officially been put to bed. A judge will need to sign off on this. But given that the lead prosecutor is saying they need to drop the charges, certainly a monumental time for President Trump, as he's not going to face any further consequences. In Georgia, you'll remember that infamous phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State that was caught on a recording back in 2020, 2021, around the election, where he told Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find him the votes to overturn the election results in that state so he would win the Electoral College votes, which would have swung the whole election. That stemmed into this massive prosecution brought against many allies, and many of which, because it's been so long ago, have actually pled guilty to charges in this to avoid this prolonged legal battle. President Trump obviously didn't, and here we are today.
Yeah, sounds like a good Thanksgiving present for him there.
Okay, so what I want to do now, I want to take a look at this case, this video right here.
The election interference case against President Donald Trump is over. Now the case could cost taxpayers in Fulton County millions of dollars.
So that's what I want to talk about now. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to let this video play. But what people are not realizing, a lot of people were allowing their hatred for the president, their disdain for, they don't like his personality, they believe he is racist, all of the other feelings that they have about him, they allowed that to say, so therefore he should be prosecuted for legitimately questioning the outcome of the state results in the state of Georgia. 11,000 votes is incredibly close. And any politician who is running in a race that tight should have some concerns, particularly in Fulton County, because we know they like to cheat. They should have, anybody would raise a concern and say something is not right here. But to imply that questioning the results of an election somehow equates to a whole RICO charge was just wild. And it demonstrates, if you actually listen to the 20 some odd page statement, or I guess, I don't know what you would call it, the lead prosecutor here who decided to file the motion to have this case dismissed, he gives a very compelling argument as to why this case lacked the merit to even move forward. It shows and demonstrates that Fonnie Willis is not a well-seasoned or competent prosecutor, as if everyone wanted us to believe that she was. And the fact that this woman was reelected again, she hasn't been reelected because people believe in her skill set. I find, particularly in South Fulton County, we are in the bastion of melanated Marxism and colored communism, and the whole, sadly, in South Fulton County and in other parts of metro Atlanta, you still have a large population of people that they are so blue, they will vote blue no matter who. And it did not matter about this public scandal of indiscretion that was the cloud hanging over this woman's head. We saw this woman stand in front of a whole church with black pulpit pimps behind her, not calling her to repentance, not saying, lady, this was shameful. Why do you have us here standing with you? These men stood with her anyway, because that is how corrupt Fulton County is. So now let's talk, or let them explain to us how the residents of Fulton County are now probably going to be faced with the penalty of paying for Fani Willis's costly, negligent mistake.
Channel 2's Richard Elliott reports a new Georgia law means that lawyers for the residents and the other defendants can file paperwork to get fully reimbursed for their legal fees.
Early Thanksgiving morning, President Donald Trump's Georgia attorney Steve Sadow posted what we already knew was coming. He would be filing to recover all the legal fees Trump spent defending himself in the election interference case. Quote, now that President Trump has won his Georgia case, we will be moving for attorney's fees and costs under Georgia code. That code, passed last year and tailored specifically for this case, allows the defendants to recover their legal costs if the prosecuting attorney was disqualified for misconduct and the case was dismissed.
Well, she was disqualified for misconduct. The case ultimately got dismissed, and I'm sure it is millions of dollars in attorney's fees that Donald Trump has amassed. They are now coming to Fulton County to say, you need to pay up. And do you know what that spells for Fulton County residents? If they don't have the liquid cash to pay those court costs and attorney's fees, the city council or the county commission will probably have to move to raise taxes to cover all of all of these fees from a highly litigious prosecutor who wasn't operating in wisdom, who was not thinking about the residents of Fulton County. Nobody asked for this. I believe a battery was put in the back of Fani Willis, and she pursued this because of personal ambition and because of what it would represent for her, but not any sort of justice that the residents of Fulton County were saying, we've been wrong and we want you to go and prosecute this. I don't believe that's what it was. But let's let this finish and then we'll wrap this up.
We spoke exclusively with defendant Robert Cheeley's attorney, Chris Anulowicz. Anulowicz agreed that under Georgia law, his client is entitled to get his legal fees back, and he confirmed it was their intention to ask for it.
He was very grateful that this has been a long ordeal. It's been an expensive ordeal, and he was very relieved and grateful about the non-prosecution that came about today.
While no one knows the exact amount of legal fees all the defendants pay to all their attorneys, speculation is that Fulton County taxpayers could now be on the hook for tens of millions of dollars in compensation. Emory Law professor John Acevedo agreed these kinds of cases involving racketeering charges, especially when they involve high-profile people such as Donald Trump, will have a hefty price tag.
Once you're dealing with folks who are wealthy, whether that's a president or an actor, musician, football player, they have the money to bring a lot of legal experts to bear on their case and to cause delays.
In Atlanta, Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
So I hope you guys caught or realized that Georgia has been embroiled in this battle for a while, particularly when they were asking Fani Willis for receipts and documentation and all sorts of things. The state of Georgia recently passed a law that asserts that if you are a defendant in a case and the prosecuting attorney ends up losing or the case gets dismissed, not losing the case, but the case gets dismissed, that you as a defendant have the right to go and seek remedy and reimbursement for the attorney's fees and the costs. So let me show you guys this. This is actually from Fulton County Commissioner Bridget Thorne, who I happen to have the privilege of being Facebook friends with. Shout out to you, to the beautiful Bridget Thorne. Thank you for always keeping us abreast of what's going on. and being one of the lone voices in the northern part of Fulton County that tries to bring some sense of normalcy and fairness to the county commission. But she posted this a few days ago, and I love how she edited it. It says, Fulton County taxpayers could, she marks that out and put will be on the hook for millions as Trump case ends. New state law allows defendants in the election interference case to recoup attorney's fees from DA Fani Willis's office. Now, what I want to do here, I don't think you guys can see it here. Here's the post. Here's the post that I want you guys to see. Bridget Thorne states, the election interference case is dismissed. Fulton taxpayers must pay up. In Atlanta, major decisions against Democrats tend to be announced right before a holiday or a big weekend, hoping you aren't paying attention. While the election interference case is dismissed, Fulton taxpayers will be forced to pay up. Georgia prosecutor Scandalakis stated that it is a basic truth that it is not illegal to question or challenge election results, end quote. He also said this should have never been a county case. Normal municipalities, local municipalities such as a county, if you think about it, typically do not have the resources or the money to prosecute a case of this magnitude. In my opinion, Fani Willis bit off more than she can chew, probably in more ways than one, but that's not what this video is about. Let me continue. The dismissal will put a significant financial strain on Fulton County. Under a new state law, taxpayers are on the hook to reimburse the 19 case defendants, most likely tens of millions of dollars for their legal bills. That law says that if there is prosecutorial misconduct, District Attorney Fani Willis's misconduct, and a second prosecutor finds no grounds for prosecution, the defendant's legal expenses must be reimbursed. In January, we should know the millions that Fulton taxpayers will owe. Honestly, I like this law because what it does is it allows there to be some sort of check or balance or stopgate to prevent malicious prosecution or prosecution that is not being levied for legitimate reasons. This law could not have been passed at a more better time. The post goes on to note, it is worth noting that defendants often incur substantial legal expenses, which can prompt them to consider plea deals to avoid these costs, as seen in the case of 4 defendants. However, in this instance, the financial burden will shift to Fulton taxpayers. That's you, the people. In addition to the defendant costs, there were costs associated with the RICO trial and payments to District Attorney Willis's boyfriend, Nathan Wade. Fulton taxpayers have already borne significant expenses. Furthermore, the last 5 years have seen court backlogs and issues within the jail system, culminating in a DOJ consent decree, which Fulton taxpayers are also responsible for funding. As District Attorney Willis stated, quote, Lady Justice has no price. Nevertheless, it appears that the costs associated with Lady Injustice will be substantial, likely reaching tens of millions of dollars. That will be a burden to the taxpayers of Fulton County. Let me tell you something. Fulton County taxes are already astronomically high. I am telling you, those of you who live in North Fulton County, if you live in Johns Creek and Milton and all of those other little cities, you need to incorporate and break yourself off from Fulton County. Now, see, the reason why they don't want to do that is because they know the bulk of the tax burden in Fulton County is carried on the backs and the shoulders of the affluent population of North Fulton County. Now, hear me clearly. There is an affluent population on the south side, but it's a different kind of affluence. It ain't Alpharetta, North Fulton, Roswell affluence. Just keeping it 100. And so the reason why oftentimes they don't want the northern part of North Fulton to split off from the other parts of Atlanta and South Fulton is because of that revenue. If I was y'all, I'd either move, I would sell my property and leave because your property taxes are going to go up, or I would incorporate and move, get your city out of from Fulton County's crosshairs, because this mistake, this prosecutorial misconduct is so expensive that now the Fulton County residents are going to be held holding the bag. And so I thought I would cover this because I haven't done a lot of content on Fani Willis. The content kind of just makes itself. I wanted to give you an update as to what happened. The case is dismissed. Let's clap. Right, let's go ahead and celebrate that. But at the same time, we do need to have some broader discussions regarding how this is going to impact the Fulton County taxpayer. And then what kind of stain does this put on the Fulton County DA's office? I mean, to me, their credibility is shot. There are already other problems of corruption and misconduct and how things are handled at the Fulton County jail. Fulton County is just a swamp sewer of a mess. But I am curious to know, what do you think? Do you think that it was strategic that this law was passed right when this case was pending? Like, who knew? Who knew that no other prosecutor would jump on this case, and that the state prosecutor, I believe that's what he is, decides to take it, reviews the case, and was like, this is some BS. I file a motion for this to be dismissed. Judge Scott McAfee has gone ahead and signed off on it. And Donald Trump can lay this drama to rest. So many of the co-defendants, shout out, I don't want to call her name, but you know who you are. I have been praying for you, and I pray that every dime that you had to spend, that it would be restored back to you, that your attorney's fees would be covered, and that you would somehow be able to pick up the pieces of your life, because this was absolutely horrible. And this case should have never been a county case. I don't even believe it had enough merit to be even brought to prosecution to begin with. But leave me a comment down in the description box below. And until the next time, you guys, stand firm, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.